Hello, everyone. Emily, welcome.
Hi.
Welcome to another Optics. Um, what do we call this? Triple Crown preview. That's kind
I
of
think
what
yeah, something like that. Road to the Derby.
Road to the Kentucky Derby previews. We're
Yeah.
previewing all this great preps and looking past the previous preps last week. It's good, I think, to get kind of look at the results of last week, kind of how we
I
handled
think so
it.
too. I think that's very, very, very key because especially with the way that we do things, it's like we're always looking to next time, right? So
Right.
taking that information and what you can do with it going forward. Because some of these horses we'll see again, and a lot of them just don't cut the mustard.
Yeah, yeah, and some surprises, and it helps us too as handicappers, right? Get better because we kind of learn
Yes.
right from our mistakes, or at least from our thoughts, and we can just continually improve, and that's what this is all about. So we had two last week, Emily. One was canceled, and it's being rescheduled for this week. That's the Aqueduct Withers. So we'll kind of review our review of the last time. I think the only change is they added a horse. And so we have to evaluate that new horse in the race. But other than that, it's the same exact field. And you made an interesting point last time. We'll get into it when we get to that race about, the delay and how who that potentially could affect it hurt, right? So
Yes.
we get at that. But the first race that we did last week was it was the last race, but it was the 4-horse field. I figured we just cover that quickly. The Bob Baffert International, the Robert B. Lewis, which he had all 4 horses. Newgate was the winner. It was a pretty well contested race. I would assume. I guess the horse hard to figure was hard to figure. Ran a pretty good race actually, and so I don't know. I don't know how you kind of rate that race based on that performance, but hard to get for me. Hard to really take anything out of that race.
Well, I mean, I think for the most part, you start kind of seeing some horses eliminated, right? Like the one,
Yeah, the one.
which
Yeah.
I kind of like alluded to, that when
Yeah.
that horse just didn't show up at Los Alamitos, it was like,
Yeah,
that one's
that's
probably
true.
done. Even hard to figure. It's like I don't see that horse taking a step forward. Uh, it's funny. Bob Baffert called that horse Worcester, and then I think he corrected. But I'm gonna go. I like Worcester, so I'm gonna stick with that. It's still a maiden. And again, like a lot of the Bob Baffert horses, they kind of show their potential early. So this one,
Yeah.
just kind of being a grinder, might end up with like Brissett or something out of Indiana. Who knows? There's something there, but not quite to this level. And Newgate will get a test, hopefully.
Yeah.
But I do think are we going to do the Golden Gate one or no?
Yeah, we could do it. I have it up here, so
Okay.
if you want to look at it. Yeah.
I mean, kind of leading into this, there's those 2 horses from Baffert that are going to run at Golden Gate. You kind of have to maybe take the approach that he didn't pick this spot for them, and what's the reason, right?
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. I'm with you. I guess the 1 and 4, you think, kind of falling off the Derby trail. Two's still. I mean, the 2 Newgate still kind of potential, and I guess Worcester as we're calling them too, because because it's kind of so first time versus winners. They thought he ran a legitimate race. It was okay. Nothing great shakes out of that race, though, in my opinion. I'm kind of looking elsewhere right away. And I'll show you some. I want to show you a graphic when we get to it after we look at the Holy Bull.
okay.
The Holy Bull is kind of. I mean, I could pull up like the clip that I had. I actually listened to it. I was trying to cut it before this meeting, but I didn't quite get it done. But where you talked about like the bad common race, right? The Mucho Macho, which you thought was we thought it was going to be kind of a negative common race, and that was the case, right? I mean, 8 we had some questions about, but he was legitimate just based on the field.
Yeah.
And I thought I made a little bit of a case for that too. Who ran a decent race at a big price to kind of fill out the trifecta.
And it's funny because I made the same case for the 3.
The 3, I know.
They both ran kind
Yeah,
of
that's what I was going to
underneath.
say. So
Yeah.
I think we're kind of on that race. We're kind of it was a pretty good assessment of that race, right? The 2 long shots and the favorite, and that's the way to kind of.
Well, not even the favorite. The horse that should have been favored.
Well, right. Yeah. That was the other thing. That was the other crazy thing. The Rocky Can was not the favorite in that race.
Yeah.
Cyclone.
I mean, that's again
right?
just, somebody left a comment. We were kind of going back and forth, and it was like a great discussion. One of the other videos, like, about the plot, and was like, Rocket Can was like a standout on the plot. Like, how do and we went into like a little bit of detail, but at that point in time, you and I are both looking at him. We're like, this horse is probably going to be favored. Like, I mean, I see what the
right?
line is. And then if he's favored, it's like, are we really making that big of a case for him at 4 to 5? Because it's like that, that number wasn't like too crazy at the time. That, I mean, it was within the realm. So when it becomes post time, all of a sudden the horse isn't favored. You're like, well, this is easy, it's the easy play.
Like, 6 to 5. I was thinking 5 to 2, never, 6 to 5 million. And so I was surprised. So I didn't bet the race, to be honest with you. I was doing something else at the time, but it was a good opportunity if you kind of, play the 8 over the 2, 3. It was a pretty good job there. The thing I wanted to show, though, because I think the best race, though, I mean, that was a decent race for Rocket Can, but I think the best 3-year-old race, in my opinion, of the day was the 8th race at Gulfstream Park. And the horse that won was Tap It Trice. I don't know if you've seen that race at all, Emily. But I did,
and I saw everybody on Twitter go bananas.
Oh, did they? Okay, I don't follow that. How people go.
Yeah.
I try not to, because I don't want to get caught up in. I'm trying to be more objective, and because I tend to go the other way, and I sometimes become too negative. But I watched this horse, and I was like, I really liked the way he kicked in. It wasn't so much everything else; it's just the way he finished and the way he looked as he finished. And I'm going to show you, I know I've been kind of playing around a little bit with this. And these are results that come out of, I guess, the charts at Equibase. And this is one of the categories is average stride length. And, we talked about this. First of all, I'm not sure. This is kind of a new way of doing this in collecting this information. So I'm not going to say by all means it's completely accurate, because I don't know. But I think it's probably okay, just to kind of as a starting point. And I just would say that the other thing is we talked about like the horses in traffic, does he really get the stride out and stuff. But I just want to show you the comparison between the 3 horses that won. Newgate, and I'm looking more toward the finish, how the horses really striding out as they finish. Now, again, 2 turns versus 1 turn in the case of the Holy Bull and all the rest, but this horse had about a 23.24 and 23.08 is last furlong or so. Rocket Can was kind of in the same range, a little bit better, 24 range, 20, for the first one, and 23.41. And now look at Tap It Trice, 26 and 26 almost. I think that I can't hardly read that. And so what I do when I look at this, I'm like, does it match my visual? Does the data match my visual? And it does. I mean, because I saw this, I'm like, this horse is really kind of striding out here. He just pictures to me that he's going to horse that's going to thrive going longer. And I think the data kind of alludes to that too. So I just wanted to point it out, especially when you're talking about the Derby, because if you ever look at the Derby plots for the last 20 years, they really kind of predict horses with squares do much better, even than normal, because you want those horses to be able to finish. And this tells me that this horse might be on that track. More to see, as the competition gets, tougher. But out of the 3 winners this weekend, that was my favorite one, 3-year-old. So, okay, so we're going to go on to this week. Okay, see what we got. Any comments on that, Emily?
No, just one kind of general. So good to see you both. Great show as always, and learn that product also. So
okay,
but yeah, so far.
Okay, so we're going to Aqueduct. We're going to do a replay of the Withers. I guess it's Young Fra is the new horse, the number 3 that we didn't have in the original Withers. But the last time we did this, Emily, we were kind of leaning on horses off the pace. And I guess the 2 horses coming kind of off the pace. The one that we're really interested in was Hit Show, the number 4 is Greg Cox's horse. And also, I think there's some interest in General Banker, just because he comes out of the same race as the favorite. I assume is going to be the favorite is Arctic Arrogance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our deal with that horse was, his 2 races now, he kind of got out finished. He was good though. It wasn't like was no finish, but he just kind of got out finished. And to me, there's still the question: is 9 furlongs his optimal distance? I know he can get it because he ran a really good race in the Remsen, but I still question that. And so, especially with the kind of the pace scenario and all the rest, I just thought he might be a little bit vulnerable. General Banker was in the Jerome with him, and I thought he ran pretty well, with the fact that he was very wide in that trip. And it wasn't as much of a pace scenario in that race, much more of a pace scenario. I think the extra distance is going to actually help General Banker. So I thought he was a kind of a contender, but Hit Show was the horse that you had some good insight into if this race got recarded. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so this is just something we've noticed as far as like horses, and barns that they point to certain races, right? And they get horses that are coming into those races like in peak condition. So as far as Hit Show, he was entered even in the week before, back on January 28th, to run in the Southwest. Brad Cox had another pair of runners and ended up moving Hit Show to run in the Withers last week. Which isn't that big of a deal, it being like 1 week later for a horse to keep conditioning. But my concern last week was, okay, well, if this horse was initially going to peak 2 weeks ago, January 28th, then, okay, we're still holding conditioning for, whatever that was, February 4th or 3rd or whatever. Now it's the 11th, and it's like, that's really my one concern. Other than the fact that I think the horse is very logical. It's not only, as we kind of project, getting the right pace, but a horse that's been able to build race to race, improving speed figures. Stamina doesn't seem to be an issue. Already has the conditioning around 2 turns. Is making the third start, would have been making the third start of the form cycle, kind of all things considered. But that's the one kind of thing that just kind of looms as far as like when these races get rescheduled and when they start calling audibles.
Yeah, and he hasn't had a published work since then, since he left Oaklawn.
Yeah.
So that's another concern for me, but we'll see. I think it's a race where I want to take a shot against Arctic Arrogance, and I just don't see taking a shot against them with, other than the 4 and the 5, because just from a run style perspective, I just think.
What about the 3?
3 was the other. Yeah, 3 was. Here's the problem with me with the 3. I just think that race that he comes out of was cheap. It hasn't come back strong.
Yeah.
It was a main special weight, so I think he's got a real class
Sure.
uphill battle of class. So. That's why I kind of like I think the 5 is the decent horse. I think that horse is going to be suited to 9 furlongs. And maybe like that race we did, I guess we did that mandatory pick 6 with the 3 we thought might trip out, even though we didn't like him. Yeah, he may trip out the 3, but, my focus will be the 4 and the 5 in here. And I would have to use them both. Just because of the things you brought up about the 4 maybe not being ready for optimal performance now. Might have been sitting on one, and then kind of the delay might hurt him. So I think that's the Withers. So that was good, because it's good when we did the work already on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we're going to switch over to Tampa. Oh, what am I doing? No, that's not the race I want.
Maybe the most contentious of the preps, I would say.
Okay, so I'm in the wrong race. So I'm going to go to I think it's race 10.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to just get this ready too while we're chatting. Take a quick look at the plot. It's tough. It's a tough plot, right? Because, from a suitability perspective, there's a lot of horses just haven't routed or run on dirt in the case of the 1, right? And 1 has been a turf horse. So a lot of horses trying something for the first time is always difficult for me. And you can see the plot fit is red, just doesn't have a flow to it. I would say that, the 10, maybe from a pace perspective, might have an advantage a little bit.
Well, then again,
but you don't know when they stretch.
with the 10, you've got to be careful too, because he's coming out of 1-turn miles.
Exactly. It's a tough read for me, this race. Let's go to the form. Just, I don't know if you just want to because when I've looked at this, one of the things I try to do is, just from a class perspective, which of these horses kind of match up. And I would say if you're coming out of like, unless the race is spectacular, you're coming out of like an optional claimer or something, or maiden special weight in Tampa, I'm against you in this scenario. You know what I'm saying? Because you got the shippers coming in. And I just think from a tier, Tampa versus Gulfstream.
The plot, John, the plot's not showing up. It's back on the, it's still on the Equibase chart.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Got to get a better production guy.
There we go. Okay.
Okay. There's the point.
Yeah. So I mean, I think, and this is probably a good segue, but let's start with the 7, because the 7 is coming out of the Remsen, listed as the morning line favorite, and a horse that if this horse wins, it's not like it's going to be the biggest shock in the world, but a horse that could be vulnerable as the favorite in this race.
It could be. I mean, he ran really well in the Remsen. I got to give him that. And he,
yes.
and, right, really well.
Yes.
And it's like.
But the horses that have come back have not done so well.
Right. And
so did that race take those two horses? Did it put them like completely over the top? Because we've seen that in the past, right? Those two horses just kind of bottom each other out.
It really could be. And then we mentioned this last week, right? Weather. When you see that keyword, it's like, I don't know, right? I mean, I just think when you see that, horses run really huge in that kind of scenario. I tend to downgrade them the next time versus horses who run really poorly. It's such a, like I explained, New York, it's just been crazy. You can't, it's hard to get a handle on the track, in the winter there because of the rain, the cold, the warm, it's got like every weather element there is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would downgrade that figure, obviously. And we saw it when Arctic Arrogance came back around about, 11, 13 points less the next time out. So,
well, with if we have that chart, it's more of that Arctic Arrogance ran back to a number that he had been running in the past. I don't know if you want to pull up like a side by side, but it's like if you kind of take it's always hard to do like an apples to apples type thing. But prior to that, WNL was running 83s.
Right.
So,
but I mean,
will the real Slim Shady please stand up?
Yeah,
Who are you? Who are you?
I give younger horses a little bit more, leeway, because they could jump up 10 points and then they establish a new top and they can go from there. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a horse that's been running like 20 races and he, all of a sudden, he's been running 80s. I mean, he's an 80s horse, but these horses are still developing. Who knows? There's a thing in their training or there's a distance or whatever. And they jump up to a new top and they're like, it's just that. So I give a little bit more leeway. I'm not as stringent on that. But we still don't know really how good he is or how not good he is, to your point.
And in the context of this horse being the heavy favorite.
But I will tell you, in his debut, he ran an 83. And I think he beat, I think he beat Rocket Can in that race, though. Let me just go to this.
Yeah, the Rocket Can had kickback, it looks like.
Yeah.
Or no?
No, I know.
He had a layoff that followed. I think that's what it was.
So this was
Rocket Can had a layoff that followed.
Okay.
So who knows what?
But still, I mean, but I'm just saying, it's like early on, it was a quality field, right? It was a quality, maiden special weight as a 2-year-old. So,
instant coffee was in that field.
Instant coffee. Yeah. I'm just saying, it's just it's those races are better, especially when you compare them to these horses coming out of maiden special wins at Tampa. It's like night and day, right? Saratoga versus Tampa. Look, I mean, I could see trying to make a case against this horse. How low do you think he is? He's 9-5 in the morning line. He's probably going to be think 6-5. You would think, don't you?
Yeah.
Don't you think? Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to take that short? Up to you. But he's like you said. Wouldn't be shocked if he won. Wouldn't be shocked if he lost. I mean, it's one of those things. So I think what we got to do is take a look, hunt around. Let's see if we see anybody else that's kind of interesting. That was my problem. I wasn't kind of enamored with anyone in this race.
I have some ideas.
Okay, good. So where do you want to go next?
Do you want me to start with those horses? Well, okay, I'll tail you in the sense as far as the Tampa races. I'm against all the horses that are coming out of the Tampa races, which is the 12. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. The same thing with the 9, and the 9 is projected to be pretty short as well at 9-2. Both those horses coming out of the Pasco, which is typically like the prep, which I think gets the kind of added attention. Those horses finishing 1-2, and in my opinion, I think the third place finisher was the better horse. If I'm thinking of the right race, because it was kind of that blanket finish. Is that the right race? No, sorry, not the third place finisher. It's a different third place finisher. But that race just kind of being weak overall. So. Not a fan of that.
Yeah, I don't like the plot either. Plot is terrible.
Yeah, the same thing with the 2. That might be the horse. The 2, yes, this is the race. The 2 and the 5 come out of that January 13th race where it was kind of that blanket finish at the wire, and that's the race that I think probably the third place finisher was probably best in there. So I'm not crazy about the 2 going forward or the 5 necessarily, but the 5 I wish wasn't in this race for kind of a random reason. I know the horse looks good on the plot, but again, that's kind of because of the lack of data. But as far as the 5, the note says green. The horse was in the outside post that day. I think it was just a 4 or 5 horse field. I'm trying to remember. It was kind of a 4 horse field. Broke outward. And so I went back and I was like watching his races and I'm like, it's just like because he was on the outside and didn't have a horse next to him. I'm like, does he only have one eye? Like, what's the deal with this guy? And he kind of does that each time. So I'm like, ooh, that sucks because I'm going to make a case for the 6 in a second here. But that's always a liability when you have those horses that just are kind of, going outward at the start. So to kind of like process of elimination, the 1 is just a little bit too slow. Visuals don't stack up for me.
It's a turf horse, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're taking a shot. Now, I'll go to. I guess I'll start with the 6 because I've kind of already started with the 6 here. I'll come back to the 3. It's a horse that's just really developing nicely. I was able to go back and watch those races, and I just like the professionalism of this horse, that he's been able to show versatility. The way that he handled himself around 2 turns. I know it's on the synthetic. I know it's against the state bred company, but he's just a developing type, and the way that he travels, I think they're in this race to see where this horse stacks up. And those races to me just kind of nothing to knock. They're probably going to allow him to show some tactical speed because he just looks so comfortable out on the lead last out. Aramillo comes in to ride, who has been aboard for those 2 wins, so kind of has some confidence, with this horse all around. And as far as class, like we shall see. Right. And then has that kind of liability to his inside. Did you want to say anything about this one, or should I move on?
No, that's good. I have nothing to add. So.
All right. So then the other horse I'm going to make a case for is the 4. Okay. So the 4 is going to come out of the Mucho Macho Man, which going to last week was a race I kind of poo-pooed based on those horses. Those horses in that race I wasn't crazy about.
Right. But different day. different race.
Yeah, exactly. And the winner of the Mucho Macho Man now is the number 10, Dreaming Kokona, which is a horse that was put up by disqualification, a little bit of a controversial call. But as far as the number 4, this is a horse that was making his first start of the form cycle. And just from the visuals of that race, looks like a horse that's going to be able to take a step forward. Now, just kind of following his races, starting from the bottom up, you can just see from the numbers, he's a horse that's showing progression race to race. So that kind of developing type. And you kind of start to look a little bit more. Now, I know those first 2 races are on the turf, but at that time of the year, a lot of the races for the juveniles are 2 turns on the turf. And the fact that they ran this horse in a stakes race, that's a $500,000 stakes race at Kentucky Downs. You could say they're taking a shot, but I mean, that's that's pretty hefty for a horse that's making just a second start, right? And then since then, the horse has just improved. I mean, improving the speed figures, green, there's no red in this horse's form. And if this horse does have a move forward in this second start of the form cycle, has already proven around 2 turns, has the fitness from that last race, because he did have some ground loss in there despite being free. He was kind of in that outside stalking trip. Could really be the horse in this race. Because there's no real knocks as far.
He was one of my contenders. I had the 4 contenders in this race for me were the 4, 7, 10, and 11. That was it, and he was one of them. So, yeah. I can't, I'm not going to argue. That's exactly what I saw. So I thought this horse had a legitimate chance here. And he's a good price, right? I think in the morning line, he's 15 to 1.
Yeah. Now, as far as the 10 I talked about, just not sure if there's that much upside. And then
I agree with that. But you just can't, just based on the kind of, if he just kind of gets out there, and either in a stalking or in a lead, with this kind of field, you just never know. He could probably, and you know what, that race 2 back, even though it was a sprint, was super key race. Just a super key race. Just came back really strong. But he's trying 2 turns for the first time. He's got that outside post, but without a lot of speed in this race, if he can get, it all depends. You got a lot of horses stretching out, so you never know what happens.
Yeah.
But if he can get a comfortable tracking trip, sometimes you think, oh, he's going longer. He was kind of drifting and fading late last time. This is going to be worse. Sometimes it's not as bad actually. So yeah, but I guess he's 12 to 1 too. That's the reason why I had to keep him in there.
Yeah. And then as far as the 11, this is just more of like looking at the horse like from a visual standpoint. He just doesn't do it for me. I don't think he's the most efficient mover. Just kind of like some knocks from that perspective. It doesn't necessarily look like a horse to me that is gonna appreciate going long. I just don't know. Like, he finished behind Cycle Mischief. He ran a clunker. That was a total dud, which we kind of said might happen. But just as far as litigate, I just visually his looks just don't do it for me. And he just seems like the type of horse that people are going to gravitate to because it's Pletcher, it's Saez, they're shipping in, looking for that kind of new face that's developing.
It's a bad bet. It's going to be a bad bet. He's going to be like 3 to 1 or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, you got to watch the board, right? Because we were talking about Rocky Can, and he was, we thought he was going to be 6 to 5, and he ends up 5 to 2. But in this case, I think this horse is going to be closer to 3 to 1. If he's 6 to 1, you can't leave him off your, exotics. But
I'd be like worried.
Yeah, you're right. I know that's the other case with him.
You're telling me what I kind of already know at that point.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe he's 2 to 1. I see that. I see all what you're saying. But I would say he's a contender in this race just because the race comes up, weak for the most part. I just wanted one point on the 2 and the 5's plot, because I think last week someone was bashing us for like plot horses that we, don't use your own data, that kind of stuff. First of all, our data is not just the plot, right? So it's forms, it's the notes, the form cycle analysis. But in this case, the 2 to 5, I much prefer the 5's plot. That, to me, the plot of those 2 horses, the 5 is much better than the 2 from a plot perspective, because the 5 is an off the pace type horse, the 2 is an on the pace type horse. So the 2 is going to have trouble keeping up. The 5 doesn't need to keep up. He's a horse that could come from off the pace. So, I mean, if you're looking for a price underneath and you're looking at the plot, 5 looks better to me than the 2, Emily.
Okay.
And the 5 is going to be a better price than the 2, no doubt.
Yeah, and I think the 5 is kind of one of those horses that he's going to kind of stick for underneath.
Yeah.
Now, 3 is the only horse we haven't discussed yet, which the 3 has a lot of challenges, right? Because he's taking on winners for the first time. He's stretching out around 2 turns for the first time. He's making his first start back in 2 months. But it's another horse that has shown progression race to race. Yeah. You can see it in the grades. You can see it in the Optix figures. So there's still more upside there. And it does kind of seem like that there could be some quality to this horse. I mean, going back to that Saratoga race on debut, you guys noted it was a key race. It hasn't been as productive, but it hasn't been that bad. You know, it's kind of like horses that kind of look like this that weren't necessarily winning next out, but kind of started to put it together a little bit.
Right.
So I think there could be something there, but I'm still a little bit concerned this one could be another kind of race away. And it's probably at a time right now, where Mott is probably going to take money, especially like we thought last week, coming off the Pegasus win. That's part of the reason we thought that 8 was going to end up taking so much money. Well, now that they've won with the 8, they've won with Art Collector. I don't see this horse being like favored by any means, but another one that could end up being a wise guy type horse. And I think there is upside there. I think there just are those kind of challenges as far as coming into today's race.
Yeah, I think this is going to be more of a prep than anything. That's what I probably would, we'll see how see what the intent, see how he runs and see, what it takes out of him. But for me, this is probably more of a prep than anything for this horse. So did we cover everybody? So I think Emily, you mentioned the 6 and the 4. I think that's kind of 4 is kind of our common horse in this race. So, and we think that the 7, could win, but we don't want to be taking 6-5 or even money on him at this point. So,
I guess we didn't mention the 8, but 8's probably another horse that's just a little bit below. Again, a lot of challenges. That horse kind of looked like they were all out last time too to get that.
And that race is at Tampa.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It falls into that category. Yeah. Just wanted to mention it just so we have it. Okay. Checking all the boxes there.
Okay, very good. So we're gonna move on to got that Saratoga race. Golden Gate. Okay, I'm ill prepared. I looked at this. And I guess the big thing is, and I don't have the morning line my first thing is could you play against some of the Baffert horses because they're coming to a place, if they're coming here, it may not be.
I have the morning line.
Okay, so what is it on the 1?
Okay, so the 1 is 4-1, the 2 is 3-1, the 3 is 10-1. The 4 is 2-1. That's the morning line favorite. The 5 is 5-1, 6 12-1, 7 20-1, and the 8 is 6-1.
Who does that, Matt?
I don't know.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I looked at this and I looked at the 4, but I'm a little surprised because I think, don't you think the 1 and the 8 are going to take much more money than?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We
can pull up the grid because I did do all the notes for this.
The thing is Matt, if it's Matt who's a track announcer, he's a good handicapper. It may not be a good morning line, but it may be a good handicapping line actually. Because he's kind of downgrading the Bafferts, right?
I don't know who does it. I can't. No guess.
Okay, if anyone knows, let us know. So what's your point on the Baffert horse here? What do you think of the Baffert, the 1?
Well, the 1, let me pull up the grid just so I have it a little bit clearer on my end to talk about these horses. I don't like the declining speed figures, especially for Baffert horses, without excuse. Even though the horse won next out, I still don't like that. It's another horse that had the, stablemate winner. Was in a blanket for minors on debut, the wins at Los Alamitos. They scratched out of San Vicente. The horse has been off 2 months. I just, I'm not a fan of that declining speed figures. The extended comment in that race says the horse moved up around the turn and does not have the most efficient action.
Yeah,
it's
that's
probably not
really
information.
Yeah,
it's probably not information you're going to get too many places, and I can't imagine the owners are happy if they ever read that. So
they won't be supporting this product with that.
Yeah, and then as far as do you want to do the other Baffert?
Yeah.
That's the 8. So the 8 is coming off some red keywords. I mean, even before that, the drop on debut just kind of showed maybe there were some class questions there. Didn't show much in the second start. They ended up dropping to get that win. The horse was, hard regress, had the double layoff lines.
Now going 9 furlongs on synthetic,
Yeah, they're going to have to send, just neither of those horses are for me. And again, to the point I was making earlier, I think if they thought these were the horses that had the goods, they probably would have entered a 5th horse in that race. Right. I mean, why not? Right. Yeah. But, they're here
So the line is actually probably a pretty good fair value line as opposed to a morning line, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because I wouldn't take 2 to 1 on the 4.
Oh no, okay, yeah, I'm just talking about the Bafferts right now.
Okay, but yeah, I mean the 4, because we can kind of go there next as far as the favorite. He's just such an honest horse. He just kind of shows up and runs every time, which you can't knock him. The one thing that you can knock is there really just hasn't been much speed figure progression. He just, he's had a lot of those starts and he's very honest, but he tends to just run that same race every time. And at some point, some of these other horses are just going to catch up to him. Yep. And that's sort of the same thing that, the 2's listed as the second choice on the morning line. And I don't really get that. He paired up 85s. It's this is another horse that's going to get faster. The horse that's interesting to me is the 5. Because the 5 ran an 86 on debut, and that was back in October.
Right.
So as a juvenile, a number that's as fast as the 4 and is almost as fast as those Baffert runners, right? And it was a B+. They kind of used the horse because it was from the rail, but he was just kind of on a different level. And that's why I ended up going with the B+, because it was just, this horse is just he's just on a different level. They bet him down from 8 to 1 of the morning line that day. So they kind of knew they had a little bit of something. Now, this next race, this January 16th race, makes me think that they're pointing to this particular event, right? Because they come off that 78-day layoff. They're going to give the horse a race. Not necessarily looking for the top effort, but let's give them a good race off the bench, which they get. And again, it was a 4-horse field. They kind of had the same thing, used a bit for position out of the gate. And the horse was both you and I don't like when the horse has the open length lead to the wire and the rider stops. Right. And so the rider doesn't, he's not in a full crank drive, but he's still teaching the horse, right? Here's the stick. We're still going to run, this type of thing. So I thought it was a good, a good learning experience. Insight. And it just seems the type of horse that has upside, is not fully exposed, and probably has the intent for this race. Now, there's obviously the challenges because, 6 to 9 furlongs, stepping up or whatever. But I mean, this is as good as it's going to get anywhere, No,
you sold me on this horse. I mean, physically, how does he look, Emily? I mean,
I don't see any issues. I mean, going back to the debut, the extended commented, bro, it looks like a developing type to handle more ground.
There you go.
I mean, 9 furlongs, who's to say? But
well, I mean, it's question marks there for all of them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of they're all going to get it. I don't know how fast.
He's 5 to 1, and you probably get all of that. I would think. Don't you think? At least. You know the price, yeah.
Because maybe those other two horses take money, and then the Bafferts take money. I mean, if the horse ends up being like the fifth choice, I mean, my God, yeah.
No,
To me, he's like the only horse I could play in this race. I can't play anybody else.
I just was curious on that thing that we showed before about the average length stride. I was just curious to see.
Oh yeah, let's pull that up.
I'm doing it on my other computer, so it would be faster if I do it that way.
Okay.
This was the second race on the 16th. I do have a chart. Let's see. He had later in the race 23:41 and then 22:76, but that's a sprint, so it's different than a route. So not terrible. It doesn't scream like marathon runner though, but not bad. Yeah. So because he was 24 at the half mile, then 23:41, 22:76 at the finish. Much better than the rest of the field by far. So as comparison, who's the other horse that let's take the
well, and it's also hard to compare too because he's on the synthetic.
He's on the synthetic. It's a hard compare, but so not easy. But I like for all the things. And then the other thing is again, we talk about situationals. Who's running against, right? So it gives us a lot more confidence because the case you made against the other runners in the race, right? From a risk reward perspective. Be interesting to see where the board goes on the plot. How's he plot?
Quad 1 square.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good bet, I think. And you got a capable trainer, right? I mean, this guy knows what Steve Sherman, Art Sherman's son, obviously knows what he's doing. He's established Golden Gate trainer for years, decades. Good. I like that. That's a really good analysis, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
When someone's onto something, you can listen to people and say, all right, whatever, I'm just not feeling it, but I feel it. I mean, I didn't handicap this race as deeply as you did, but I really kind of feeling it based on your analysis. So there you go, folks. Enough said with that race. So, one other thing I wanted to look at. Is there any questions, Emily? Anybody have any questions or anything? No.
We have a good one. Now open for lunch. Jacob Shepard of Equibase has been making the morning line at Golden Gate as of September 22. Boom. Thank you. That's huge. Good. Thank you for letting us know. Yeah, that answers that. Thank you. It's awesome.
So like this is a race when I kind of I glanced at it, as I was going through this. This is the Sun Coast, and because I was like, this is not a graded stakes race, so I thought it wasn't a points race, but it is. You alerted me to that, and because when I look at the film, like there's some horses here that they could be okay,
this looks like a good race. Really good race.
It could be okay, and you got kind of a red plot fit, and you got horses that haven't gone the distance. Obviously, that's why the right side of the plot, the surface distance plot, looks the way it does. I would say the 9 kind of like on that plot stands out because he's the only, he's one of 3 horses that apply. She's a big square. And she also kind of has a little bit of that look of the plot we discussed, a couple of times last week, where you got that kind of crowded quadrant 1, you got a bunch of circles, you got some high speed rating, they're above the line, and you got kind of a square there sitting there, we have 1 in quadrant 2, 1 in quadrant 4, right? So, and then when I started looking at the notes on Julia Shining, and I don't know, do you have a morning line on her? I assume she's the favorite. Is that right?
I will confirm right now. 5-2. I think the 1 is the favorite. Is even money.
Okay,
the 1 is even money, and the 9 is 5-2.
That's right. So for me, I look at this race and I say that I'm concerned a little bit about the distance for her, Julia Shining, but I think she has the most upside.
Wait, because she's not getting enough ground?
Right. Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I typically don't like deeper closers on this kind of trip. But she won't be that. She probably won't be. She'll be probably less than. She won't be that far away. They'll probably Saez will have a closer. But I think whatever I think of what happens in this race.
Hold on one second. To that point as well, also off the notes, because you have kickback on the debut, which we know those horses that take kickback kind of drop themselves out.
Yeah.
And then the same thing with no handle in the second start. So there is a world where she can be closer to the pace. Okay, carry on.
Yeah. But I would say there's a horse that I would keep an eye on for the Oaks. I think she is a potential Oaks contender based on what I've seen now. She's got to develop, right? Whatever. But just kind of looking at her first two races, I mean, especially going into a 9 furlong, grade 2 right after her debut. And, she ran really well despite not handling that track at all. I mean, she just wasn't handling it. And she improved her speed figure too. She just kind of looks like she's got something. And that's what kind of just got me interested in the race, because I'm like, well, she could be an Oaks player. So I really want to watch this race and see how well she does, see how she handles Tampa, because it's kind of a funky track too. You just don't know how things are going to turn out. And then, we have some other horses, as I started looking at the race, and I've seen I rarely see an A-. So when I see the A- on the 8, at Woodbine, I know you do that, kind of like, whoa, okay. And then, I kind of looked at the 1, I'm like, well, this is a pretty good race, actually. There's 3 horses in here that could be, real Oaks contenders, and maybe even 4, if you include the Chad Brown, which, I don't put her on par with those other 3. But what do you think?
Well, I'll put another one in the mix, and that's the 4. The 4, I mean, she only has the 2 starts, but the debut, as we know, the Churchill kind of notes taker can be a little bit on the conservative side as far as, so putting improve, in the extended comment, a race to build on, never truly comfortable, comes back off the layoff and does improve. And that was a very good effort, because she did make legitimate 2 moves. She moved early to get position, and that pace was pretty solid. I know we have it as an S, but she kind of moved where it was fast in the middle of that S, and
Right.
and then moved again to take the lead. So that's why I added that X flow, because she had to make those moves without much in her favor, and then also do so coming off the layoff. And it just seems like, there's more for this one. It's to, show something on debut enough to catch the eye there, to come off that layoff and overcome kind of all that. And I think Leperoux sticks, or no?
He's
Who's
in
ready?
there. Leperoux.
Yeah, Leperoux is, so he rode her on debut.
Yeah.
So he comes back to ride her for that race.
Yeah, I just think, again, comparing class, who she's running against versus who she's running against now is a big difference. I mean, look at the Optix fig range for that race, 50 to 58.
Without question, there's definitely the more established types in this race for sure. Yeah. But she's a horse that's she's listed as 30 to 1 on the morning line. She could run well in here, even if it's underneath, and then keep developing.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing, you just look at this race and it's good. Just look at down the finish position.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, but that's why, I was saying, this is a quality, non-graded. This is a graded stakes race. To me, this is like a grade 2, but it's a non-graded stakes. Because look, you got grade 1 winner in the 1, right? Mm. 2, right? She's 3 times placed in grade 1 races. You got a grade 2 winner in the 9. I mean, this race is loaded. So even if your horse here doesn't, like you said, if she runs a decent race, she's a horse to look for, just because of the quality. Anyone coming out of this race who runs decently has got to be considered some. So This is a race, to me, this is a very key kind of Oaks, preview of the Oaks to some extent. I think you got some really nice horses in here. So we'll see how it goes. And to see how they bet it. And like I said, to me, I don't know if I really have someone I'm like dying to bet in this race. I'm really just kind of watching this race and see how it goes in terms of the Oaks futures.
Yeah.
So that's a good race. All right. Well, I think we covered all the races here for the Derby and Little Oaks there, which we normally don't do. But next week, I think we got Fairgrounds, right? Is the Risen Star next week, Emily, or the next week after that? Week after that, I'm not sure.
I think it is next week, because then the week after that is Rebel.
Okay, so I think it's the Risen Star. What we'll do is we'll go through these races again, the ones that we've reviewed, see how we do, and see, who's moving forward and who doesn't look like they're moving forward. And we'll move on to I think it's the Risen Star. And I have a list of these races. And Risen Star, I think that's it. Oh, Sunday. It looks like a race, but I think that's out of the country. The Rebels the week after that. Yeah. Okay. So we'll cover those races. Anything else, Emily?
Well, is it the week after that is the NHC? I don't know if I'll be able to. Well, maybe I'll do it. Maybe we'll jump in here from the NHC.
It's in March, the NHC, right?
Yeah, I'm going.
Oh, cool. You participating?
In some ways,
okay.
one could say.
Okay. Don't give out the information. This is public broadcast.
Well, I'm good because Hawthorne has a lot of players, right? We qualified a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that have $1 million bonus on the line. So.
Okay. Well, good.
Yeah.
Help them out. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to our broadcast. Check us out, optixeq.com, and Twitter at Optix, and always contact Emily on Twitter too. And I think we're going to be putting out tomorrow a focus for the last 4 or 5 races at Tampa. So look for that. Yeah.
And then I have the live stream tomorrow too.
And the live stream on Twitter, right?
Well, the live stream is on YouTube as well. YouTube, so follow Hawthorne channel if you haven't already, or if you follow me on Twitter, I'll send out the link. But yeah, those 2 things tomorrow.
And tomorrow, our pals from Donegal Racing have a horse running at Turfway Park. It looks like a horse that has some potential. I don't know if he runs really well. Maybe there's a spiral in his future, but we'll see.
Is it when Donegal Danny?
Donegal. Now you put me on the spot. Give me a second, I'll tell you. And he's probably not even going to be the favorite. There's a possibility he may not even be the favorite tomorrow, which is amazing. Donegal Arrow.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's going to run tomorrow at Turfway Park, I think, in race 5. So check that out. All right, everyone. Take care. Thank you for listening.